Good morning, everyone. It's Dr. Hodges, and I just got back from a conference where we were looking at a lot of revision work, getting some good ideas, learning about all the newest equipment. And ironically, it got me thinking as I was doing some postings. Somebody asked me the question, can you make my sleeve bigger? And I realized that this is actually a question that I get a lot. Do you have the fear that A, you're going to lose too much weight, and or B, you're never going to be able to eat again, so maybe you should make your sleeve just a little bit bigger? And my answer to that question is always a resounding no. So let's talk a little bit about that. So whenever I think of a sleeve gastrectomy, I want you to know that is what I call it is a purely restrictive procedure, meaning all we're doing is making your stomach small. So that is what's going to be giving you your weight loss. Addition to that, though, there is a metabolic component to the sleeve because it does remove a large portion of the stomach that secretes some different hormones, such as ghrelin, and that it also affects your appetite. And so that also aids with a patient's weight loss. And so, whenever I'm making my sleeves, I try to make a nice small sleeve without increasing your risk for developing a stricture, because there's kind of like, you can't make something infinitely small or you just wouldn't have a stomach or nothing would be able to pass through. However, I've also found in my experience that if you make it too large, then what's going to happen is people are just going to fill it full of food. And so typically whenever I'm making my sleeve, I'll use a measuring device called a Blvd. And at the time of your surgery, the anesthesiologist or CRNA you're asleep, will put the little measuring device down your mouth, and then I guide it along the inside curve of the stomach. It's called your lesser curvature. And I use it as my guide to create your sleeve. And I know that this is no frame of reference, but this is my finger. I have little, small hands. And so the size of a 32 French bougie is roughly the size of my finger. It's just a little bit bigger, but not much. And so when you look at my fingers, that's probably about, that's what the width on the inside of your stomach will be, or maybe just a little bit bigger. And so why do I say, no, I'm not going to make your stomach larger? Well, this is for a couple of reasons. In the end, no surgery is perfect. And so none of the surgeries are going to get off all of your excess weight. And so when I also get the question, am I going to lose too much weight? Again, the answer is always a resounding no, because with a laparoscopic sleeve, you're probably still going to have about 30% of your excess body weight that you have left to lose. So that means if you had 100 pounds to lose, you're probably still going to have about 35 more pounds that you need to lose, get you to your ideal weight. There's, between the sleeve bypass and duodenal switch, probably the sleeve is going to be the easiest one where patients can begin to regain weight. And that's partly because there isn't that small bowel rearrangement. And so, how are ways that patients can kind of eat through their sleeve? And it's not that they're stretching out your sleeve. Your stomach is never going to stretch out to the size that it once was. But ways that people cheat. If you drink your calories, it's always going to be easier for you to take things in liquid form as opposed to eating it in solid form. And I think so too. Think about a big gulp. While in the beginning you wouldn't be able to suck that whole thing down, like let's say you haven't had surgery yet, or you think back to when you had surgery, that prior to that, if it's hot outside, you could go in and guzzle a couple of bottles of water. Not going to be able to do that right after surgery. Probably will never be able to do that. But if you took those several bottles of water and you sipped on them all throughout the day, you're going to get those in. So there's that little analogy that says, good morning, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Same thing with weight loss surgery. So if you drink your calories, because it might not take you, or maybe I should say this, you might not be able to get your big gulp in an hour, but you certainly could if you had all day to do it. The other thing would be, if you are grazing on food throughout the day, good morning. I know that there are a lot of folks that will say you need to have multiple small meals throughout the day. And what they really mean are multiple periods of eating that are only about 150 calories each. I do not think that that's a meal. I call that a snack. And so sometimes I think we need to better define what we consider a meal. And for meal, 150 calories is not. And so I have found that one of the ways that patients can begin to regain their weight is by grazing throughout the day. So let's say you skip breakfast, or maybe you skip lunch, and then you just start pecking on some peanut butter crackers. Peck, peck, peck. And then you have some low-calorie popcorn. Peck, peck, peck. And then maybe you have some carrot sticks. Peck, peck, peck. So by the time that you've gotten in all these different crunchy foods and you've nibbled on things all throughout the day, typically you probably would have ingested several hundred more calories than if you would have just had a meal all by itself. And remember, let the surgeries do what they're designed to do. The surgeries are designed to restrict your food. And I mean, there's a very big connection that we have, you know, when you've had surgery, you go to lunch, you can only eat a small amount of it. You're full, you're satisfied, but we've just been trained to think that if there is food left on our plate, we have to eat it. And especially if you're here in Texas, everything is jumbo sized. So that's going to be a pretty big plate. And I suspect that the serving size is going to actually be enough for 2, maybe 3 servings. And so let the surgeries do what they were intended to do. Let them restrict their eating. And so if you were to bring that food back, hand it to go box, and most of us will because it costs 15, 20 bucks. If you take it back to your desk and then you start pecking at it throughout the day, you're going to get in all those calories. You might as well not even have had surgery because you've kind of short-circuited the system. And then I think the final way where people can regain weight is by crunching on a bunch of crunchy snack foods. All those simple carbohydrates are going to begin digestion as soon as they hit your mouth. That's why we have sugar-free gum. That way you're not getting in all the extra sugar from your bubble gum. Same thing with any other simple carbohydrates. And so this is how a sleeve can fail. Liquids that are high calorie, grazing throughout the day, and snacking on a bunch of crunchy snack foods. And it's for those reasons that I say, don't make your sleeve any bigger than it needs to be, because there's going to be ways that it can short circuit, and I don't want that for you. I do a lot of revisions in my practice early on because a gazillion bands were placed in folks. I found that whenever I was doing a lot of revision surgery, the bulk of my revision surgery was band removal and revision to other bariatric surgeries. Now that the sleeve is the most commonly performed bariatric surgery in the US, I'm now getting patients that are 2, 3, maybe 4 years out from surgery, and they've regained weight. I've had patients that have come to me and they've lost over 100 pounds, and then when they come back to see me, it's 3 years later and they've regained their weight and then some. And I think just with a sleeve, it's just a little bit easier because you just don't have that malabsorptive component. So you do definitely get some of those metabolic additions and changes in the processes, but you don't get everything. And sometimes it's not as long lasting. So that is the long answer to a very short question. They're doing They're doing construction on that house. But that is the very long answer to the short question of, can you make my sleeve bigger? And the answer is a resounding no, because I want you to lose as much weight as you can and have the best chance at keeping all of that weight off. I promise you, you're not gonna lose too much weight and you're not gonna end up looking like a lollipop with a big old head, okay? Hope that this helped. Bye.